Metal Gear Solid is back. Well, sort of. With the recent release of the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 and the recent trailer hyping up Metal Gear Solid Delta, I've had a lot of snakes on my mind. And that got me wondering what Electronic Gaming Monthly thought of the Metal Gear Solid series back in the day. Who's their favorite snake? As it turns out, Electronic Gaming Monthly reviewed a total of 14 games in the long-running series between 1998 and 2008. That includes all the mainline games up to the PlayStation 3 era, as well as many of the portable spin-offs and re-releases. Sadly, they did not get around to reviewing either of the Nintendo Entertainment System games, and the magazine folded before hits like Peace Walker, Metal Gear Rising, and Metal Gear Solid 5 came out. But don't let that get you down, because we have an incredible selection of games to talk about. What we're going to do today is count down EGM's best and worst Metal Gear games using their own words and scores. There's no editorializing here, we're just going to focus on what the critics said back when these games first came out. So go and put on a pair of quiet shoes and get ready for a sneaking mission, because this is Electronic Gaming Monthly's Top 14 Metal Gear games.
Listen up. This is an extremely sensitive covert operation. You'll be one man against an entire squad of high-tech special ops. They will be armed, and they will be dangerous. If you want to survive, you gotta have brains. You have to be in peak physical condition. You have to have nerves of steel. The fate of the free world is in your hands, soldier. Failure is not an option.
Sir, aren't these tests kind of easy?
Suicide mission.
Oh.
Kicking off our list at number 14, we have Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops Plus on the PlayStation Portable. As much as I enjoy sneaking around and building yet another Metal Gear Super Squad, it's disappointing that the gameplay goes relatively untouched here. It's still solid, but it could have been even better. For example, what about adding a soldier class that drags bodies faster than my 84-year-old grandmother who has 2 bad knees? Anyway, at least Plus's mission structure is a step up. Mixing the story elements keeps your focus on how to play, which is more complicated than you might think, and really prepares you to take your troops online. Number 13, Metal Gear Solid VR missions on the PlayStation. While it doesn't include all the enhancements that the Japanese Integral version had, VR missions is still a solid game by itself. Anyone who got really good at Metal Gear Solid is gonna dig all the new challenges that await you in the puzzle, mystery, and variety missions. This is basically a Metal Gear Solid expansion pack, letting you enjoy the VR mode of the first in a whole new way, some of which is pretty damn cool. It's a good weekend rental at the very least. Number 12, Metal Gear Acid on the PlayStation Portable. Acid, paradoxically, has everything you'd expect from a Metal Gear game, but is totally different from every other Metal Gear. Sneaking around highly guarded complexes? Check. Insane villains? Check. Boss fights against bipedal nuclear tanks? Sure thing. Except it's all turn-based. As someone who likes Metal Gear and turn-based games, I quite dig it. But I know that Acid's unique formula will alienate most of you. My quibbles with the gameplay include stuff like inconsistent AI and how you have to use a card to do everything, even if you just want to move one step in front of you. And the story is actually weirder than Metal Gear Solid 2's at times, with plenty of secret agendas. I like it, but you have to realize what you're getting into. Number 11, Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes on GameCube. Well, if you're gonna play a version of Metal Gear Solid, then this is definitely the one. Granted, that may not sound enthusiastic enough considering the excellent job developer Silicon Knights did. Partly because, despite all the wonderful new additions to the game, and there are many, it still feels like you're playing the original Metal Gear Solid. Then again, the original was fantastic, so it only follows that the Twin Snakes would be at least the same. But with each new feature comes a downside. First-person aiming makes regular combat easier, but it also makes boss battles far too easy. The new cutscenes are brilliantly produced when they're not overdosing on painfully cliched bullet time effects. And the graphical overhaul is nice, but we know the GameCube was capable of even better. Number 10, Metal Gear Acid 2 on the PlayStation Portable. Not only did the developers make this sequel easier for newbie players to get into, but they've also added some significant gameplay tweaks for veterans. I particularly like the linkage cards, which apply bonuses to whatever weapon card you use to turn a mild-mannered pistol into a crazy weapon that chews through robots and soldiers. Having over 500 cards makes for a decent collect-em-all mechanic as well, while the included solid-eye 3D goggles are pretty cool at first. I got crazy headaches after using it for a while. But Metal Gear Acid 2 is a good example of how to do a proper sequel, even if it's a sequel to a game that changed the way you play your favorite franchise, for better or worse, depending on how you look at it. Number 9, Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance on the PlayStation 2. Metal Gear fans who played the crap out of Metal Gear Solid 2 a year and a half ago will have plenty to look forward to in Substance. Aside from the main game itself, which remains one of the boldest, most experimental blockbusters to date, you're also treated to some fun VR missions that totally capture the essence of Metal Gear Solid 2's gameplay. Sadly, alternate Snake Tales episodes all take place on the tanker and Big Shell, and the skateboarding minigame is completely redundant, no thanks to Tony Hawk. Metal Gear Solid 2 is still an awesome game, but 1 year later, and with the regular game now available as a $20 greatest hits title, Substance should have been released at a discount price. Number 8, Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops on the PlayStation Portable. This new Metal Gear installment finally gives us the tactical espionage action we expect from a Metal Gear Solid game, and a whole lot more. Kojima Production took the classic stealth action formula and added soldier recruitment, which makes it absolutely vital to knock out baddies and throw them into a mystery van to build an army. You can then assign these soldiers to various squads to do stuff like make medicine, find guns, or provide helpful backup during the oh-so-quick missions. Portable Ops ends up being a bizarre Kojima chimera of Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Acid, and Pokemon, which is a-okay with me. Also, the game's varied use of the PSP's online capabilities and the fantastic graphics makes this a stunning showcase for the system, despite the funky control and occasional online latency hiccups.
Stop!
超本格かくれんぼメタルギアソリッド2。
あ、部長ミッケ。
And we're back with number 7, Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots on PlayStation 3. It was disheartening, but maybe not entirely surprising, to find that Metal Gear Solid 4's significant game ideas dried up before the fiction wrapped. The game is front-loaded with change, with Snake's accelerated physical decay, his alliance with rebel forces, and plenty of globe-trotting during the game's first 3 acts. Yet the story's rising action and eventual parade of conclusions gives it a definite action movie vibe. The end should please fans, regardless of how Metal Gear Solid 4 gets there. Nearly every question receives an explanation, a few surprises are left in store, and as long as you consider the game's sci-fi war theater of the absurd context, it, amazingly enough, ends up making sense. It's not meant to be taken too seriously, but to maintain this kind of narrative order amid so much ridiculous chaos is an impressive feat. Number 6, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty on the PlayStation 2. You better get used to picking your jaw off the floor, because from a gameplay perspective, Metal Gear Solid 2 exceeds my wildest demands. The sheer number of things you can do from moment to moment made it not only an incredible and memorable adventure, but also one that was downright fun. Metal Gear Solid 2 does, however, take a couple of steps back from the previous game. While the game is better designed, the story is not nearly as good. Also, the final boss in Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of the most anticlimactic fights ever. If this is indeed the last in the series, then it ends, as one villain quotes in the game, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Bring on Metal Gear Solid 3. Number 5, Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance on the Xbox. Almost everything great about Metal Gear Solid 2 on the PlayStation holds up in this re-release. The sharp graphics, the fantastic sneaking, fighting, shooting mechanics, and the attention to detail still amaze. Plus, all the added VR missions take advantage of the game's biggest strength, the gameplay, and cut out its one real weakness, the silly storyline. Challenging and addictive, many of the stages are so intricate that they become almost like little puzzles. The controls don't quite work as well as the PlayStation 2 controller that the game was designed around, but they soon become comfortable. A must-play for Metal Gear Solid 2 newbies, but at least worth renting, even if you already beat it. Number 4, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater on PlayStation 2. You know that feeling that you get when you're watching the ending credits of a really amazing game, when you instantly yearn to start all over again to discover all the stuff you missed along the way? You'll be feeling that way about 5 hours into Metal Gear Solid 3. Simply put, this is the deepest, longest, and most replayable chapter in the Metal Gear Solid series yet. No Metal Gear Solid 3 review could be complete without addressing the game's outstanding bosses. The nerve-wracking, ambitious duel against one boss, codenamed The End, will likely go down as one of gaming's finest. So will the game itself. Number 3, Metal Gear Solid on the Game Boy Color. Finally, a big league franchise on the Game Boy that's actually faithful to its namesake. It's amazing how much Metal Gear Konami was able to stuff into this little cart. You have the stealth elements, the weapons, the items, the codec, distracting guards, there's even a versus battle and a crapload of VR training missions. It's like the old 8-bit Nintendo and PlayStation Metal Gear games made sweet, sweet love, and this was born. The pinnacle of Game Boy Color graphics, animation, and sound with a great story that wasn't dumbed down to a 5th grade level. No offense, 5th graders. Number 2, Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence on the PlayStation 2. I get really annoyed when DVDs do crazy double dips, and I'm kind of annoyed that this is happening with Metal Gear Solid 3. Except, if you're going to double dip, then this is definitely the way to do it. I always loved Snake Eater, despite its camera, and now with a new perspective, it's nearly flawless. I say nearly because the game still got a bit too much yapping, and the new camera actually makes a bunch of the boss fights really easy, but not so easy that it feels broken like Twin Snakes on the GameCube. Not much is quite as satisfying as slamming a guy into the pavement and making off with the objective as Snake. Okay, maybe one thing is more satisfying. When you reach that goal, only because you tricked your opposition into staring at a bunch of girly magazines on the ground. And finally, in number 1, Metal Gear Solid on PlayStation. Metal Gear Solid is simply incredible. Maybe incredible isn't a strong enough adjective here. This game is so full of innovation, so full of surprises, so full of fantastic design, the compliments don't do it justice. You'll have to experience Metal Gear Solid to understand what I mean. This masterpiece deserves all the hype it received. It's realistic and gritty, but it never forgets that it's a video game. I haven't felt this kind of overall satisfaction from a game since the glory days of the Super Nintendo. Hey, thanks for watching me count down Electronic Gaming Monthly's best and worst Metal Gear games. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes almost every week. We've already covered Mario, Sonic, Batman, Final Fantasy, Twisted Metal, Ridge Racer, Zelda, Contra, Castlevania, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and so many more. give the playlist a binge. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite Metal Gear game? There are just so many to choose from, including several that didn't get reviewed by EGM. I know a lot of people are going to say Snake Eater, but I think that Peace Walker is at least in the hunt. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week with more reviews and a brand new episode of the Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,